Hey everybody, my name is Alex with Hake Hardware, and in this video we are going to go over how to prepare your farmer drives for the Autonomous Farmer. And this guide is specifically for using the CLI version, not the Docker version of the Autonomous Farmer. So just keep that in mind. You're going to want to make sure to look at the Docker version of this guide as the commands are slightly different. So it's pretty straightforward. The first thing we're going to do is just jump into our terminal here, and we want to identify the disks that we're going to be using. So the first thing I usually do is lsblk, and that's going to list our block devices, and you can see I've got quite a few different NVMe's here. I know for a fact that there's certain NVMe's that I want to use and certain ones that I don't. So what pops out most obviously is that we have our operating system disk here. It is mounted to the root partition, and we've got some boot partitions in here. So I know I don't want to do anything with NVMe 0 and 1. I know that I have two cache drives here that are in RAID 0. I'm not going to touch those. But I have a 14 terabyte NVMe 1N1 and a 14 terabyte NVMe 4N1. And these are NVMe enterprise drives that are 15.6 terabytes that I know that I want to prepare to be used for my farmer. And then this SDA drive, that's a USB drive. It's weird that it doesn't show the size, but maybe it's because it's like an Ubuntu installation USB disk, so it might just be partitioned weird. So now that I know that I want NVMe 1N1 and NVMe 4N1, I can proceed. So if you didn't see, just be careful when you're doing anything with the disks. Make sure that all your data is backed up, just in case you wipe the wrong disk. We are going to be wiping partitions and reformatting the drives with a new file system. So likely anything that's on those drives are going to be lost. And this guide is also really meant for if you're going to be using your entire drive for Autonomous. So if you just want to use a partition, if you want to like split it up where you only use half of the drive and you create a partition with half the size of the drive, or you want to use just like a folder on your operating system drive, this isn't the guide for that. We're going to be wiping the entire drive. So just keep those things in mind. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is just wipe any remnants of an existing like partitions and metadata for old file systems, and we're going to use wipe fs for that. And we actually need to do sudo wipe fs -- all. And I'm going to prefix this with dev. And although it's not listed here, we should prefix our devices with dev. And then NVMe, I know 1N1 is what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and wipe that. And then I'm going to press the up key and then just change this to 4N1 because I know the other NVMe is 4N1. Okay, my disks are wiped, so I'm going to clear that out. And then the next thing we want to do is format the drives. So we're going to put a new file system on there. And let me bring over the command, and we'll go over the contents of it here. So we have sudo make file system ext4. That is a recommended file system for Autonomous. -m0 is no reserve space. So for like a OS partition, you're going to want some reserve space for like the root file system, but for a dedicated drive to Autonomous, you don't need any reserve space. So this is going to give you a little bit of space back because you want to use as much space as you can since your rewards are based on how much space you have. -t large file 4. So this is specifically beneficial for Autonomous file sizes, and that's why we use that flag. And then dev and then the device. So we'll do NVMe 1N1. And yours might take longer. These are really fast drives. Sometimes I have drives that take like a couple minutes to do this. So don't worry too much if it takes a little while. Okay. After this, the next step really is organization. And a lot of this is subjective, but what I like to do is make a mount point in this /media directory. So sudo make dir media and then autonomous. So I'm going to be mounting all my farms to the media autonomous path. And I like to name my mount points farm dash and then whatever the last 5 is of the UUID. So lsblk-f will give us a UUID. So I have 2 UUIDs here, and I'm actually going to save these in a notepad. This is why I like SSHing into my servers, because I can bring up a notepad on my computer, copy these, because I'm going to need these later. So let's actually create our mount points. So sudo make dir media autonomous farm dash. Let me just grab the last 5 of that, put that there, enter, and then sudo, I can actually just press the up key, grab the last 5 of these, paste that in there, hit enter, and then if I do ls-l media autonomous, so we have 2 mount points. And now we can prepare to mount the drive. So what we're typically going to want to do is not just mount it manually, we want to add it to our fstab file. And that way, when we reboot the computer, the drives are automatically mounted. So I could do sudo mount dev NVMe 1N1, which was the C4991. So I'll do the mount point farm C, media autonomous farm-c, and we can do that. And if I do df-h, we can see that NVMe 1N1 is now mounted. But again, like I mentioned before, if we reboot our computer, it's not going to automatically mount. I'm going to have to run that sudo mount again, and it's tedious, right? You want these drives to be mounted automatically, so we can add it to the fstab file. So we'll do sudo nano etc fstab. And we're going to go all the way to the bottom here, autonomous drives, and then we're going to do UUID equals, and we're going to want to put the UUID of our drives. So let me just bring up my notepad here, paste in that, and then we're going to do tab, and then you're going to want to put the mount point. So media autonomous farm dash, and then if you remember, it was the last 5 of this UUID, and then tab ext4 tab. We're going to do some options here. So default, no A time, which is basically like don't include timestamps. It like reduces the stress and wear on the disk. I don't know if it really helps anything, but I usually add it. And then no fail. So if I were to disconnect this drive and try and restart my system, it would still boot up. If you don't have that there, then you're going to get an error when you go to boot into the system and it's not going to boot, and you're going to have to remove that drive entry before you can boot into the system. And then 0 and 0. So we're going to do the same thing, UUID equals. I'm going to bring up my notepad. I'm going to grab my other UUID, tab, media, autonomous farm dash, C4991, tab ext4, tab defaults, no A time, no fail, 0, 0. And then control X, Y. And now I can run my mount command with the -AV flag. So sudo mount. Actually, first we're going to want to reload our daemon. I always forget this. It doesn't really matter, but it allows the fstab file to be reloaded. And now if we do sudo mount -AV, you can see we already had this drive mounted, but it mounted this drive. So if it's already been mounted, it just skips it, just like the boot and the EFI, boot EFI partitions were already mounted. We didn't need to remount those. So now we know that our fstab file works, and when we restart the computer, the drives are going to be automatically mounted. And we can do df-h to verify. We have these 2 drives now mounted. Now for the CLI, when we did ls-l media autonomous, you could see these are root. So to prevent having to run the farmer as a root user, we can set the ownership of these drives to the current user. So we can do that with sudo change ownership -r user. That's like an environmental variable, I guess, to specify the current user. And then user media, Autonomys, and then we'll do an asterisk there. And what that'll do is set it for all of the folders, both folders in the Autonomys directory. And now if we do ls-l media Autonomys, we see that they're owned by Hake hardware. And if I do like touch file.txt, I think this works. I can do media Autonomys farm-0316D. Now I can see that I actually created that that file. So I actually have the ability to write to that. So you want to set up those permissions correctly so that when you run the farmer, you're running the farmer with the current user, and that user needs to be able to write and modify your farming disks. So just keep that in mind. And that's really it. You are good to go, and you should be able to hook the farmer up to your drives now. Thanks for watching. If you thought this was beneficial, please leave a like, and I'll see you in the next one.